Alright, Mr. Big Wall of Text, let's take this one step at a time. By the way, for reference, this person is talking about the My Vote Doesn't Count series. You can gather that from context, but I figure it's important to say right off the bat. Let's start with the first point. Hypothetically greater turnout in winning elections is not an answer to the question, does my vote count? What? It literally is. That's how voting works. If a bunch of people who don't vote in elections because they don't think their vote counts can change the outcome of the election if they voted, then that means their vote counts. That's literally what that means. All right, moving on to the next point. But why the implication that one's vote seemingly only matters if there's greater turnout and if one's party wins the election? Does one's vote have any inherent value or any value independent of these criteria? So this should be pretty obvious if you actually watch any of the videos that you're commenting on. But if Democrats decided not to vote for Biden, then that makes the number of non-voting Democrats required to flip the election for Biden bigger. In layman's terms, if you're a Democratic voter and you don't vote, that makes it harder for other Democrats who do vote. If you don't think that that makes your vote inherently valuable, you may not know how voting works and why it's important. So far, you seem to be under the assumption that your vote should matter more than everybody else's. But the thing that these videos are trying to show is that every vote matters. All of them. And they all matter equally. Your vote doesn't matter any more than the next person's, but these people are not voting because they don't believe that their vote matters. And if they did decide to vote, then they could potentially flip an election, which is, I think, the thing that you're missing here. But moving on to the next point. What in this scenario would increase Democratic voter turnout and simultaneously preclude Republican turnout, avoiding the subversion of your proposition? Well, first off, the people that don't believe that their vote counts in red states are the people who vote blue. That's normally the reason that people believe their vote doesn't matter. If they live in a state that always goes one direction and they lean politically the other direction, then they don't see a reason to vote. Seeing these videos would make them want to go to the polls. But secondly, my followers, the people who follow my channel, are left-leaning people. I'm not actively going out of my way to put these videos on conservative channels. My target audience, the people who are likely to see these videos, are the people who are likely to vote Democratic, but are also likely to say that their vote doesn't matter. If the people that my videos normally go to are more likely because of my videos to show up to the polls, there's nothing magically pulling conservatives along with them. I would explain this a little bit more, but you have a large wall of text that I'm trying to get through. So moving on to the next point. Even if 100% of all voters cast their ballots, it says nothing about zero-sum elections, gerrymandering, the Electoral College, swing states, disproportionate representation, voter suppression, platform defections, wealth inequality, and all of that stuff. First off, you must be new here. If you don't believe that I talk about all of that stuff that you mentioned, even in the videos that you're commenting about, you're a silly goose. And for voter suppression, there's a lot here. Super voter suppressed states like Texas, I actually go over the voter suppression and show what you can do about it to get to the polls. And in the Florida video, I showed that all of the elections within that state that I covered could be flipped solely by the people who voted in the 2020 election. Also, I have an entire video specifically about voter suppression. And in that video, I cover a lot of things, but one of the things that I say in that video is that the people who cry voter suppression to say that their vote doesn't count are typically cis white dudes who are not suppressed. And I went ahead and went to your profile and, as I said in that voter suppression video, which if you really cared about voter suppression and you really cared about watching my videos, you would have watched already, stop blaming your lack of voting on the suppression and discrimination of other people. If your skin is reminiscent of mayonnaise like mine is, you don't get to complain about voter suppression. You have to go to the polls to make it to where voter suppression doesn't happen. But anyway, moving on to gerrymandering, the Electoral College, swing states, disproportionate representation, and all of that other stuff. Disproportionate representation happens on a national level depending on what state you're in. And notice how I do all of these state by state. Which means the fact that Wyoming has 288,000 people per senator and California has 19.5 million people per senator is not necessarily relevant to these state-by-state conversations. But also in regards to gerrymandering, notice how all of the elections that I show in this video cannot be gerrymandered. They're all popular vote. In these videos, I've been covering Senate, governor, and presidential vote. All of these votes on a statewide level are based on popular vote. They cannot be gerrymandered. And while I said that in most of these videos, and I stopped saying it because I thought it would be common sense, I guess I should start saying it again. But mainly, if you're gonna write this big wall of text and end it with, "I find your argument ridiculous," before you decide to find my argument ridiculous, I'd recommend you learn how the government works. Anyway, for all of these in that paragraph, I have a video for. So just go and look for that video if you really care about any of these. But let's get into that last paragraph, shall we? I find your argument ridiculous. If is not equivalent to yes. When it comes to voting, if is what we're talking about. They're asking themselves, does my vote matter if I go and vote? Of course their vote doesn't count if they don't go to the polls. That's literally how elections work. So yes, in this context, if is what matters. Also, this last sentence where you're trying to imply that I'm saying that your vote has no value independent of others and only matters if one person wins, you're making it very clear that your goal is to purposefully misrepresent these videos, and you have absolutely no intention of understanding what the point of the videos are, even though I say them in every video. But I will answer your last question. Does your vote matter under current actual electoral conditions? Yes. It does. If you're one of those people who went and voted, then you are contributing to the success of your candidate. And if you decided not to vote, then you are contributing to the loss of your candidate. And if you are somebody who regularly decides not to vote, then you are one of the people who could have flipped the election for your chosen candidate. So yes, under our current situation, your vote matters. So the point of this video and the point of this entire series is to go vote.